So, they went out. They fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. This is the good news of the gospel of resurrection according to Mark. That they told no one, for they were afraid. Gone are the shouts of joy or disciples literally racing each other to go tell the news first. With Mark, the disciples who show up are rendered speechless. There are simply no words for what they have witnessed, and so they fled. They told no one. The story is too big for words. Now, we might be tempted to reconcile how Mark tells this story with the other versions and talk about how eventually they did go talk and that this was a momentary lapse in judgment. But I'm going to ask that we actually not go there. And instead, we focus on what Mark says happened. Instead, let's take seriously together what it means for us to encounter something so big that we don't have words for it, so good that it's scary. We don't know how to handle what we've seen. Worse, we don't fully understand what this thing that we have seen actually is, and so we miss why it matters in the first place. These are all elements that I think we run into on a daily basis and hide us sometimes from seeing what God is up to in the world. Sometimes we need, in fact, stories and symbols to make sense of the world around us. And for example, and I'm not making light of things, I would like to spend a little time today defending the Easter Bunny. Now, as a pastor for years now, people have come to me speaking in disparaging tones of Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny as though these two friends of mine are enemies that have been sent to infiltrate and ruin the real meaning of the most sacred of Christian holidays. Usually it starts with a look. And not just any look. You know, that look of, we understand each other. This person who's about to speak to me, they expect that I'm already on their side. That I, as a holy person, as a pastor, of course I'm against Santa and the Easter Bunny. And they are talking to me because they know they can share this. And then there's something about how these two simply commercialize Christian holidays as some sort of a ploy to undermine Christianity while making a buck. Well, this makes me sad. I'm not a fan of it at all. I mean, look, Christians have long used symbols from other cultures that we meet along the way, right? And we try to make sense of how God works in the world by using symbols that are native to other people so that we can make a connection. And when early churches first met Northern Europeans, they found a culture that already celebrated new life in spring, and one of the symbols of that new life was the rabbit. Not to mention the fertility symbol of the egg. Well, both of these two, especially the rabbit, represent virility and near constant, exponential really, growth, new life. The Easter Bunny gets it. The Easter Bunny brings eggs, another symbol, like I said, of new life, brings these eggs to kids to teach them something I think deeply true about who God is, why Jesus matters, and what it all has to do with us. So first, who is God? God is a loving parent, creator who looks after all that has been created, seen and unseen. Jesus helps us to see beyond our fears and anxieties and our tendency to judge ourselves and other people too harshly by reminding us that, first of all, only God has the power to judge what is good in the world, but further, Jesus matters because through Him we believe that God sees us as good despite any of our failings. All three of these start to matter. The gift of it all, what it all has to do with us, and the reason why 2,000 years later we're still talking about it is this. No matter who you are or what you have done, there is no version of you that is beyond God's love. That's the promise, and that's why it matters to us. No matter the breach in a relationship, healing can happen. New life can happen. No matter the parts of you that feel, too dead, too gone, new life can emerge. No matter the loss you've faced, God brings new life. This is the promise of why it matters to us. And this is what the Easter Bunny teaches us. To be completely honest with you, that is exactly what the Easter Bunny teaches. She or he, it doesn't really matter the gender, but it seems too impersonal. She or he leaves treats on the lawn in the garden, like we hear in the stories about the resurrection, so that children may stumble upon them and be surprised by this unexpected joy of what lies within the egg. And just as those first disciples in the garden stumbled upon this empty tomb and were dumbstruck by what they saw, children gasp at the treasures with every egg that they find. The Easter Bunny reminds us with each gasp of joy from those children that some gifts are simply too big for words. Some gifts are simply too big for words. Now, obviously, candy and, Cracker Jack treats are wispy shadows of resurrected life. Okay, I get it. There's a wide disparity between what the Easter Bunny brings and the promise of new life. But these symbols prepare us to see God's work, giving new life all around us. Because, yes, just like the prolific Easter Bunny, God is at work bringing new life into every space, every gap in existence. So often we talk about Easter as only a promise of eternal life beyond our personal death. We put that promise up on a shelf as a promise, hopefully, a far-flung, far-off day in the future. But the truth is, resurrection is something that is true every day, something going on every day in our lives. It is the constant, recurring truth of nature that new life springs up. God is always at work. As we learn to see it, we may learn to realize that more and more that we stumble across new life, everyday resurrection, everywhere we turn. That first Easter Sunday, so long ago, Jesus' followers encountered something so jarring, so different, that they literally had no words. I'd like to share some of the stories with you today of recent examples that I have seen of new life, of resurrection, a little closer to home. So I had a chance to catch up with a friend recently who had to move. Now, many of us know all too well the stress of moving. Everything has to be timed and organized just right, or else basically the whole thing falls apart. In the best scenario, there's this dropping off of one place, letting go, if you will, of a lease or selling a home, and then the finding of a new one. Well, then there's the moving company and the packing and the managing of calendars and itineraries and itemized inventories. For me, for example, I always build like an Excel spreadsheet that goes through every room in the house, identifies every box, what is in that box, the number designated to on those little stickers the moving companies give, so that when it arrives at the new destination, I can track down every single one of those stickered boxes and know if there was an issue, if there was a problem, almost immediately. I'm able to track it really well. I'm a little crazy. But even then, something always goes wrong. So I'm catching up with this friend of mine, and in this case, they found their new home and they were ready to move, but the sale of the old home kept running into problems. First, it was getting the right buyer, then it was contingencies, and then it was, they found this one person who was the right bid, the right everything, the unicorn that you're looking for, and eventually they discovered the person had a problem getting the loan. So time stretches on and on and on. They're paying 2 mortgages, 2 insurance, 2 everything on the upkeep on these 2 places of theirs. The strain on the accounts gets to a breaking point. I mean, how could a single move wipe out a whole family? I mean, things had started out so hopeful, exciting even, but now, with all this, where was God? They were at a loss. Everything that had been planned so carefully had crumbled right in their midst. So long story short, things did not work out as planned. To be frank, there was a lot of suffering. Things went beyond belt tightening. And looking back, however, my friend could see this path emerging behind him, a presence, if you will. And even as one lifestyle came to a close, something new began to emerge, and with it, hope. I mean, a sign that God was with them the whole time, guiding, and even in the hard times, that God was there supporting and bringing things to where they needed to be. Another friend of mine is facing retirement these days. And this means the death of one way of being. You know, a person he has known, an identity that he has cherished for a long time is going away. That identity is coming to a close, and there's definitely grief with that. But there's new life too. For example, passions that have long been held at bay because of responsibilities have now resurrected. They found a new voice, new ways of being called, of finding a new vacation are being sensed. And with it, a chance at a new life beyond career. And one last story. A few weeks ago, there was a news story on the local, just New York affiliate about a New Jersey kindergarten teacher. You may have seen it even on the patch or something, but the New Jersey kindergarten teacher's name is Carrie Lynn Stromsky, and she's been battling late-stage breast cancer in the midst of the pandemic, trying to care for herself, but she's been just a desperately vulnerable person right now and has to remain absolutely homebound. Well, imagine with me for just a moment this teacher. She gets so much of her meaning of why the world makes sense through her interactions with these tiny students of hers. She gets to watch and wonder as they learn about the world around them, sharing in their lives. She tends to their hurts. She laughs with their joys. All of it's cut off. Here she is at home, facing this daily struggle of hers with this diagnosis. No contact with these children who help her make sense of the world. In a very real way, Carrie was facing the passing away of one way of being while being in the midst of struggling with questions around her own mortality. And that is where Avery comes in. Avery is a student of hers. And Avery, with the help of his mom and dad, built a contraption for her. They called it the love machine, the hug machine. And with it, they allow for students to be able to come by her house and remain socially distanced, even with hugging. And so basically, it's like a rolling rack with a shower curtain in between, hanging. And then they cut out holes, and you can put, trash bags on your arms, and you can reach through and give the other person a safe hug. What they noticed, what this family noticed, was not only their own longing to see their teacher, Carrie, but also recognizing how cut off she had been from the people that make her world work. And so they fixed it. They resurrected friendship. They gave one teacher a new lease on life during a terrifying time. And the fact is, there's no words, really, to capture the beauty, the holiness of that moment. I could go on and on. There are stories similar to these all over the place in our community. We have families, for example, that are experiencing deep, deep grief right now. And yet, some of them are beginning to find a different form of closeness in sharing loss together. In other situations, we have couples who have been facing the crippling blow of another lost pregnancy, or facing that pain. And yet, even if sometimes they're questioning God, goodness of God, the presence of God, they're noticing they're getting closer and closer to each other. They're becoming a stronger couple in some cases. We have seniors in our community who have lived apart from neighbors and loved ones for the past year, and who have lost so much connection in this health crisis, and yet they're seeing a new dawn rising, new opportunities for life in the days and the weeks ahead. I like to think of these as everyday Easter eggs. These are reminders of God's presence in our lives, and that new life floods in. Even in the midst of loss, new life is showing up. Sometimes we struggle to find the words to describe what we have witnessed. We need symbols. We need symbols to help make sense of the goodness that we encounter in this world. And by learning to notice them, we're better able to see them, point them out, and to share resurrection as it's happening all around us every day. So during the musical reflection that is about to start, I want to encourage you to share the symbol of new life that means the most to you, or perhaps the stories that help you see new life in your own world. On whatever platform it is that you're finding us, share these symbols and stories. What are those symbols in your life that help you come to terms with where God has given you new life?